good here. Check it on this side. There. Hello, welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about Superman movie. Again, but before we do that, Buddy, I want to tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast.
Well, on this podcast, we mostly talk about games again, because we haven't done a movie. There was a while where we were just like a fucking movie podcast. There was a while where
like last year when we just did like all the Fast and Furious movies for like 3 months.
All of the Fast and Furious movies, all of the Marvel movies, right?
Yeah.
You know, just like going in order. I'm not even caught up on the Marvel movies. For the first time, you know, this year is when I just really fell off the kind of the Marvel movie sort of train bandwagon. But we're not here to talk about Marvel, okay? We're here to talk about DC. We're here to talk about Superman.
2025, directed by James Gunn.
Yeah, 2025, right? The backstory here is, you know, James Gunn is renowned director as part of the MCU. He is the director of Guardians of the Galaxy 1, 2, and 3. And he directed the Suicide Squad for DC and its like troubled, crazy sort of era. And then a new buyer of Warner Brothers comes in and basically goes, "Hey, I want my own Kevin Feige. I want you to be my own Kevin Feige. And I want you to start your version of like the DC universe with a Superman reboot that you write and direct." And he said, "Great, you know, I'm on board." I actually think that he said the opposite. He said, I think his ask was sort of from the bottom up rather than the top down, to say, "I am going to start this thing with a Superman reboot with you know, that I will sort of write and direct." You know, it has been pretty well received. It seems as though, you know, it's just like, it feels like I felt this kind of return to the monoculture, which we talked a little bit about
last week.
Last time, but just like, you know, this is the thing that everybody is seeing. Everybody is sort of like talking about it. There's a little bit of like a spoiler culture for it, which I haven't experienced in quite a bit. So, you know, I'm just sort of interested in getting to the bottom. What did you think of the Superman movie?
Yeah.
Also, is this the most recent movie that you have seen?
Yes.
I'm sorry, not the most recent, but like, you know, like I feel like you and I have the same story of we haven't gone to see the movies in a long time.
Yeah, I would say the most recent the movie I saw before this was the Netflix was it K-pop Demon Hunters or whatever, which we we kind of watched on a whim because we are watching through Neo Genesis Evangelion, which is kind of heavy, and my fiance sometimes comes home from work. It's like, I don't want to do with something that heavy, and we flipped open Netflix and we're like, this will probably be dumb, and it was. So
fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you end up thinking about I guess the question on my mind here a little bit is like theater stuff. So before this, what it would have been, EFIS in the theater would have been the last thing. Like, what was the last non-EFIS movie you saw in a movie theater? Anything in 2025?
Nothing in 2020. Oh, it would have been Nosferatu in Jacksonville with my fiance's family. So, and that would have been 2025. I think it was either 2025, like January, right? Yeah, it's either 2025 or like the very end of 2024.
Right. Yeah. So it has been quite a long time since we've gone to the movies, so to speak. Do you feel like, just to start in that kind of place, do you feel like, I don't know, maybe we can give our top line and then go into spoilers and stuff before we start talking about this. I'm fascinated by the monoculture aspect of this quite a lot, where it really feels like I feel like I haven't seen or thought or heard of a movie like this in so long. Where I just felt like I wanted to see it. No, I mean, I was interested in it for a number of other reasons, but just to like be a part of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Which is not a feeling I've had in just forever.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that, which is interesting because what was it? Thunderbolts was supposed to be good, right? Like I had the opportunity to watch the Red Hulk movie on the airplane, which I cannot even remember the title of that movie. And I decided, this is when I watched, Ratatouille, and Good Morning Vietnam, actually, which we didn't talk about last week, on the plane instead of.
That's a good movie. Robin Williams. Okay.
Let's talk about that in the back half, because it's a weird movie. But yeah. But like, yes, like I have not felt a super big compulsion to watch anything really for for the monoculture, as you say. I
even intended to go see Thunderbolts, but by the time it was just I was just too busy. I couldn't make the time, and I just didn't care enough. Is really what it came down to.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if Fantastic Four is gonna bring this back for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I feel like there's buzz around it. I don't know if it's actually going to be good or good or not.
I also think there's buzz around it. I also think it has probably the best movie star of the moment right now, which is Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
Everybody loves this guy, myself included. To be fair,
everybody loves him. And it's gotten to the point where he's gotten the kind of like, instinctual, oh well, he's this popular, so I'm going to hate him because he's popular type of thing. Something about like touching female co-stars because it makes him less anxious or something is a thing I've seen fly by on various social media sites.
Wow, I have not heard that.
Yeah, but
all
like
I've ever heard is that everyone loves this guy.
As far as I can tell, that's kind of like a sour grapes type thing rather than like a real thing. But but yeah, yeah, that is kind of it. It's interesting because I had the entire time I had heard mixed things and about this movie.
Oh, really?
And by mixed, it's not like mixed in that like the full spectrum. It's either like people thought it was good. There were a couple people that thought it was bad, and then there was like a whole culture war aspect, which maybe we'll get into the back half. But that's like its own thing that that was not really about the quality of the movie directly. It was about like minor, or it was about subplots and stuff.
Yeah, I am actually interested in talking about that part of things. But just to sort of take it from the beginning, what would you say your high level feeling on this one is?
I thought it was all right. I didn't think it was great. I thought it was Superman was probably my least favorite part of this movie. Like there's it's not spoilers to mention, like the extended cast is in the previews. Like, it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Mr. Terrific, is that his name?
Yeah.
I thought he was great. I thought Nathan Fillion, Guy Gardner was fun. But I thought it also had, like, we talked about this bathos problem. I thought it wasn't as bad as some of the worst stuff happens, but I thought it had some of that bathos problem that we get out of the Marvel movies. And it just wasn't super. I don't know. Like I said, I thought it was fine, but I didn't think it was fantastic. How did you feel about it?
I am in a similar sort of position. This is the kind of movie that I'm going to say I like and think is good, but I think I'm going to spend the next hour complaining about it because there's so much that really is like I guess I wanted to like it more. It is not even about like expectations. It's actually that it did a number of things that I have sort of been asking for quite a long time, but in a way that just is slightly annoying more than kind of like cool or sort of gratifying. And so I'm glad that it did some of these sort of things, but I'm annoyed that it did them in kind of precisely the way that it did. And I also kind of feel like as a kind of signpost or directional marker for kind of where things are going from here, it's one of the first times I think I would probably say that I'm not all that enthused about a follow-up, which is to say that like I totally get it if this is going to be the version of the DC universe that we sort of start with or pick up, right? And maybe it's just not going to be for me. But we can talk about some of those details, I guess.
Yeah.
In the spoilers.
Yeah, I would say like there's nothing about this movie that is like so awful that I would like, warn people off of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, to pick an example out of the air, it's not like, someone had an obviously CGI'd out mustache or something, right? Like it's part of it too is like we were talking right before we went live about like the price of a movie ticket vaguely. It's like I paid $25 a ticket for this for, a nice theater experience. Like I like my Regal theater with the, pre-registered chairs that are reclining and nice sound system. But I don't know that I would say to a person or like a family, go spend $100 to see this in the theaters type of deal.
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would probably agree with that. If someone were to tell me I'm interested, but maybe I'll just wait for it to come out, I would just wait. Like, I don't think it's sort of worth it. But maybe that's I don't know, maybe that's sort of uh the place where I'm sort of fighting myself a little bit is like, where do my expectations meter some of these things, which is probably a good place for us to kind of like mark spoilers, and we can talk about some of the specifics.
Yeah, I will say, and this is a spoiler marker. It is a spoilable movie, and I do think you should avoid spoilers if you care. So, like, if you are planning on seeing this movie, put this podcast aside. It'll be here when you come back. It's not like we care. We don't get any ad revenue or anything, so you're not taking dollars out of our pocket.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do think it is a spoilable movie.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say that I'm a big lover of when it comes to this is that it feels like they have walked back sort of years of DC marketing, which has been spoil the fucking movie. This is my biggest complaint about like Batman vs Superman, is that they spoiled Wonder Woman was like going to show up and do all this stuff, and like the commercials, they spoiled Doomsday. It's like, if they had just kept those things secret, I think that movie would have hit much better. And in the same way, they kept quite a lot secret for this movie, and I think it hit really well because of that. Yeah. So anyway, we can call this the spoiler marker. And I guess get into some of the details. So the thing that I'm a little bit alluding to is that I quite like the framework of like the first 10 seconds of this movie. The thing, it was like, 3 centuries ago, metahumans show up. 3 decades ago, Superman shows up. 3 somethings ago, whatever. It was just like, Superman. This is not a Man of Steel, Spider-Man, kind of origin story. There's no Uncle Ben, there's no whatever, right? It is just Superman exists. He's existed for a long time. Lois Lane exists. They're together in a shaky way. They're not married, right? But they're together at the start of the picture. All of that stuff is great. I feel like I've been asking for that for quite a long time, right? And it exists in a universe, a very lived-in superhero universe, which I have also been asking for. This was my favorite part about Black Adam, right? Which I also famously quite liked for this specific reason. Black Adam was a movie where superheroes were just kind of around. They were in the periphery. They came and investigated Black Adam and did all this other kind of like stuff because he was there. And I was really happy about that. I was like, yeah, this shit is cool. This is awesome. This is the way I want my superhero movies to be framed, because frankly, that is like the comics, right? When I started reading the comics for, the first time, it was the 2000s or whatever. And so there were just this huge deluge of continuity preceding that point. These people were friends. They had other friends. They had stupid villains that they made fun of in their downtime, right? All of that kind of stuff comes across in this movie, which I loved. I really did love that, right? But also at the same time, it, I guess, does feel, I think it really is sort of the bathos thing. There is an aspect of that really killed the stakes for me in this one, where I didn't really feel as though Superman was all that important to the saving of the world. And I didn't really feel as though Superman, like at himself and all of this stuff kind of going up into the actory, was a good sort of apotheosis of his character arc. I think both of those things really fell flat, which kind of made the whole climax a kind of whimper for me. It just kind of felt like we're building up to something that is essentially contrived, is really what I got to.
Yeah.
And when you get to this point at the very end where Superman is giving a whole speech where he says a bunch of stuff that I don't think the movie supports. Like, if you were to question the movie on the stuff that he says in this speech, it would not turn up good answers, basically. And all of that kind of left me with a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Plus, I could not stop comparing it to Man of Steel. And if anything, this movie has made me love Man of Steel so much more, because I'm just like, oh God, I remember why I just remember why I love Man of Steel a lot coming out of this movie.
The speech you're talking about, is this the one at the end where like that gets interrupted by Crypto in a very bathosy way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I will say, I hated Crypto. Like, I thought he was totally superfluous.
I actually quite liked Crypto, but we can talk about it.
I thought he was totally superfluous. To the movie, I thought he only added like nonsense and like, you know, it's. I feel about Crypto the way like a lot of people felt about Jar Jar Binks in episode 1.
Oh my god! Wow, that's wild. I'm like the exact opposite. I actually quite loved Crypto. I actually was thinking of recommending, even though this is not a movie I want to recommend. I was actually thinking about recommending it to Rachel just because Crypto is like the realest pet I've ever seen in a movie.
So, you know, that's fine. Like the fact that he's a real pet is fine. I don't care about that in my Superman movie, right? Like,
okay, I could maybe get
there.
Yeah,
like he's just kind of a distraction. He's, you know, he gets like a moment at the end, but like I would have rather cut him out and got other things fleshed. Like I would have traded all the scenes that Crypto was in for like, you know, the movie starting like 15 minutes earlier and showing Superman stopping the initial conflict in Baravia or whatever it was. And
okay,
also,
that's pretty interesting.
And I thought, what was it? His Supergirl, that like obviously that's sequel bait, but it was also kind of dumb. So, you know, there's that. But
interesting. Yeah, I loved Crypto, but I loved that Crypto was a real plot point. So Crypto had a number of interactions that were like kind of essential to the plot. I feel like the version of Crypto I was really afraid of is that Crypto would just feel kind of like almost like a marketing gimmick. Like they put Crypto in for the trailers, but then like he actually doesn't have any sort of bearing on the story. That's absolutely not true, actually. There's quite a lot of planting and payoff with Crypto. Crypto does stuff to solve problems in the story that only Crypto could do. But also, Crypto is like the realest pet because he doesn't follow orders. I feel like this was amazing to me, right? I feel like Crypto is like Orion, you know? I feel like the way that Superman was interacting with Crypto was so one-to-one, which makes sense because, you know, James Gunn said that he only added Crypto as after having adopted a dog. And he was like, oh, this would be perfect for Superman, and rewrote the whole script to kind of feature Crypto. And I totally feel that of like this disobedient, you know, animal that you're yelling at, trying to get it to do the thing and it won't listen. I was just like, yes, I love this. This is an amazing sort of representation of a pet on screen that I've just basically never seen before. I feel like when pets are in movies, they are either kind of like perfect automata who can expertly, you know, execute on whatever it is the plot needs them to execute on in that particular moment, or they are fundamentally superfluous and there for just all of the, you know, teenage girls to go, oh, you know, like in the theater kind of thing.
Fair. I will say I preferred Crypto from DC League of Super Pets, which we also reviewed on the show.
Fair enough. Yeah, so the speech that I'm referencing is the speech where Superman goes, I'm human because, you know, I put my boots on one step at a time, and sometimes I make mistakes, right? I don't think that's true. I don't think the movie ever... What is the mistake that Superman has made in that movie that he is correcting upon? Because from my perspective, the movie validates every decision that he made sort of in absentia. So the big one here is obviously the conflict with Barovia, right? Which, and this is why I'm gonna fucking complain about this movie. I totally understand. I just want to say for the record here, okay? This is going for a very Saturday morning cartoons. This is not even like the Justice League cartoon. This is like Super Friends, right? Like level of comic book sort of movie, which I think is fine and gets me to forgive a large number of things I would otherwise get very pissy about. Like this fucking little animal that becomes a big thing that they fight for just no reason, completely like this is a Super Friends kind of threat, and Lex Luthor is a Super Friends kind of threat. His plan doesn't make really any sense if you think about it, but I'm willing to go with so much of that stuff because, like I said, okay, we're in Saturday morning cartoon land sort of thing. But why on earth in Saturday morning Super Friends territory are we bringing up the Superman gets involved in a conflict in this time it's not the Middle East, it is in fact Eastern Europe, I guess, technically.
I felt like it was supposed to be like, you know, this is a whole other point about like, what is the leader of Brave? Who is he supposed to be? Right. We'll push that off for a little while because that's this whole other discussion. But I thought it was supposed to be like, you know, like, Russia and like Afghanistan, right? It was like the closest thing I could find to like a real analog.
And this is something that I've seen 100 times, okay? And I love this. I think this is actually really great. This was in fucking obviously Batman vs Superman, and I love that movie, and I like this, that the movie tackles that stuff in an adult way, which is to say that yeah, maybe Superman shouldn't be intervening in politics. There have been there are like 100 good Superman stories. They're about this thing, right? Like there's one where he gets just like frustrated about essentially the bureaucracy of like the UN, because he does like a thing for charity. Basically, like the Flash and Superman do a race for charity to see who's faster. It's always the Flash, but they do this race. And he finds out that like, I think it's that like the funds that were donated, like never really got there. And then he found out, he's like, oh, well, I went to go buy all this food aid, but the food aid is locked up in impounds. And so Superman goes, you know what? Fuck this. I donated this to charity. I'm not going to let it sit in impound. He flies to the impound place. He pulls 2 gigantic dumpsters of food and flies them to a place where there are starving people in Africa. And when he does that, he is met by an African warlord who steals the supplies to feed his own soldiers. And Superman later learns that the people who he was intending to feed did not actually get any of the food. And it's like, this is the kind of stuff that I think you can do with Superman if you want, right? But you have to kind of treat it seriously. Like, yes, Superman is a genuinely good person. He is a paragon of righteousness. He wants to do good in the world, but he has a pretty simplistic view of that. And that simplicity leads to sort of naivete and a sort of butting up against kind of the pragmatic realities of what it means to do good in a complicated world. Okay, if you want to do all of this things, totally great, right? Don't do those in a fucking Super Friends movie. What? Like, there's a reason that the Super Friends never had a subplot about Superman stopping a war between 2 countries. What are we doing?
Yeah, and I feel like Lois gut checks him on that right initially. I've got a whole other thing about that. And the end of the movie implies that like maybe that's a future plot thing, but I think I agree with you that like if like the most apparent reading of the movie is like, actually Superman was right. Superheroes should intervene to do what they want because, being powerful might makes right. It's good as long as it's the thing that that Superman, decides is good. That's fine, right? Like, cause he's special and perfect and whatever.
Exactly. The opening of the movie, I was on with the movie on this. I was like, oh, this is great. We're just going to get right into it. We're going to bypass all of this fucking Krypton stuff. I like Krypton. I like the origin story, but I'm happy to skip it. Okay, let's just like move on. Lois Lane is grilling Superman about him like intervening in this thing or whatever. And she points out, like, you have a very simplistic sort of moralistic framework that is unaccountable to sort of anybody. And if they had sort of left it at that and we had just moved on to Lex Luthor doing wacky mad scientist shit, I think I would have been fine, because the point of that is that it's the fraying in their relationship. It's that he is not used to being sort of questioned, and she is the person who is really pressing him on these kinds of things. And I sort of expected, because we didn't even see the initial confrontation in Barovia or whatever, I sort of expected the movie was just going to let that go, but it just kept bringing up the subplot, and then it turns the invasion into a dastardly masterminding from Lex Luthor. I'm like, what the fuck? What? That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? And so in a world where they want to use it in a simple way right at the beginning of the movie, I think it would be fine with, but it's the fact that it kept coming up. And the very end of the movie, this is actually the hardest part for me. The very end of the movie included a part where Superman said, someone was like, oh, my plans in Barovia are going off without a hitch. And Superman was like, well, I called some of my friends. And then the Justice League essentially shows up to deal with the stuff in Barovia. And I'm like, so you had Superman, whose whole thing is that he's kind of unaccountable and he's acting outside of the kind of traditional system of metahumans that has been existed, has now convinced other metahumans to sort of break the way that they do things in order to do things his way. And that all happened off screen. Like that was what was
on top of this. I feel like this has to be like another shoe drops in a sequel type of movie, because they're also like corporate sponsored superheroes, right? Like the ones that he calls.
Yes. Yeah. By Maxwell Lord, who was the bad guy in. I mean, Maxwell Lord is, to be fair to the comics, Maxwell Lord was a good guy for 20 years. For 20 years, he was sort of the good version of Lex Luthor. He was, in fact, the sponsor of the Justice League, and he was perfectly, reasonably motivated, and sort of all of the rest of it. And only at the very sort of end of his life cycle did he become a bad guy, which culminated in 2006 when Wonder Woman kills him on national television, which was his own extra set of like drama in kind of like the DC universe or whatever. But also just like, boy, this is crazy.
Yeah.
This is crazy where we're sort of going. And it really bothers me the way that Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner, right, everybody kind of goes along. This is the sort of thing that sets Superman apart from basically all other heroes. And I really dislike that he convinces, like, this doesn't feel true to their characters, right? Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, not quite Guy Gardner, come from a group called the Justice Society. The Justice Society has its own sort of like long and storied sort of history, right? But the big thing about the Justice Society is that they were founded in World War II by FDR as like the lore of this is ridiculous. So Hitler finds the Spear of Longinus. You know the Spear of Longinus?
The spear that killed Jesus, right? Or
yes, the spear that killed Jesus has Jesus' blood, so it's divine. Hitler uses the spear in order to prevent metahumans from entering Europe during World War II. And so all of the World War II superheroes, as our boys, the GIs, are going off to kick Hitler's tush, the Justice Society sort of forms to take care of law and order and deal with super villains on the home front, in the red, white, and blue kind of thing, right? So like there is a political nature to the Justice Society that is like very specific to kind of like America, and like they've run stories in the Justice Society that are about how heroes in the Justice Society don't cross these sort of borders. They don't do this kind of like shit or whatever. So this all just kind of like felt like betrayals of that kind of character. Mr. Terrific goes on to become kind of the Nick Fury of the DC universe, which is like the exact opposite of what he is doing if he is showing up in his superhero personality to stop a conflict between two sort of nations. He is the guy who becomes the lawful neutral director of S.H.I.E.L.D. level character. He is not the guy who breaks international laws to do what's right. You know what I mean? And so all of that stuff really hit me.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I'm obviously not as well versed in the lore. I actually had a couple of questions in that vein. Like,
sure.
In the comics, is Clark normally like a terrible journalist? Like, because this is the thing that struck me in this opening, conflict between Lois and Superman, right? Like, where he's questioning him. He's like, this is on the record, right? Like, he's a journalist. He should know all of that, right? Like, and he's like acting like, like a farm boy, right? Like,
yeah, I think it's bad. One of the things that makes me like, sort of the ultimate cut of the Batman v Superman is that they do a good job of showing the kind of reporter that Clark Kent is, which is that he cares about the little guy, right? In a certain sense, it's always framed as though he's like doing these like puff pieces, right? But he cares about like the human interest stories at the lowest levels of sort of society. What can he do as sort of a reporter to like bring light to that? There is a thing about him sort of interviewing himself with Superman that is actually kind of true to the comics in a way, but it's not true to it it's not true to it in the way that it works in the movie. In the comics, almost always Clark Kent writes the Daily Planet story about the adventure that Superman has just been on, and it's kind of using like the denouement, right? At the very end of the story, you'll see the last panel in the comic is the front page thing by Clark Kent kind of thing. It's like that. It's kind of used for hokum, right? He is fundamentally a good sort of journalist who is a good journalist in the same way that like a beat cop
Sure.
who knows their beat,
like
and,
a local reporter, which in our current point in history is a dying breed, unfortunately. But so that makes sense to me. It just that was just like a thing that like really stuck out to me as kind of like he should know this. This is his job too, right? Like he should know that he can't, anything he says to his reporter girlfriend is going to be like, taken as by those rules, right? Like,
yeah, see, I like that interaction because this is super true Superman stuff. Superman has this simplistic sort of worldview. He just kind of implicitly knows what he thinks is right and what he thinks is wrong, and he doesn't really think any deeper than that. And so it's pretty common to be put in these kind of challenging philosophical situations where a very simple people were gonna die just kind of doesn't cut it. You need to think harder about that one, Superman. And Lois is very often the person who asks him these tough questions, right? So all of that I was kind of okay with. But yes, he is not typically a bad journalist.
I would say that part of it I'm totally fine with, right? Like that like the morality challenge, the part where like, he's like, "Oh, don't use that." Because like, which like reads like, a modern day, personality not understanding how like what is off the record means, because it is a thing I follow in the real world. Sometimes it's like, oh, people don't understand what that means, but like he's a journalist, he should know what that means. Like it would make sense for like I don't know, Guy Gardner to not know what that means, because like what is his day job, or does he not have a day job post Green Lantern?
He doesn't really have a day job. I mean, a couple of ones. The big one is that he runs a superhero bar. This is wild lore. He runs a superhero bar for a long time that I can't remember the name of. Maybe it's just called Heroes or like Capes. I think it's called Capes. Yeah. So Guy Gardner makes the superhero bar that just shows up, that people go to Capes, and he's the bartender, and for like 15 years it was just kind of like the backdrop of like, if fucking like, I don't know, the Flash needed to talk to Elongated Man about something, it would be pretty common that they would meet in Guy Gardner's bar.
The point of that was not the details about Guy Gardner's bar, which is fascinating. The point is just that like
okay, yeah.
The point is that like he would have a reason to not understand, like, like get tripped up on the rules about like, what's on the record, off the record. Clark Kent is a journalist, right? Like, but yeah, I guess kind of in the same vein about like fidelity to the comics. How did you feel about like the big twist, which is that Jor-El is like a Kryptonian supremacist, and like,
oh my God, I was waiting for the other shoe to fall on that. I thought it was lies, and I kind of can't believe that they just held it through. There is a second aspect of this that I really do want to talk about, but I just on its level, I hate that shit. That's actually quite wrong, and it does bother me. I'm willing to extend the movie like sort of license. So this is a thing of, I get it and it works for the movie, and I'm not mad about it on the movie's own sort of terms, but in a way of like transitioning, I would sort of say honorably, the adaptation to screen. This is a deeply poor version of that. Jor-El in the comic, I mean, this is just like me. This is part of what makes me love Man of Steel so much. Jor-El in the comics is very similar to Jor-El in Man of Steel. Jor-El in Man of Steel is the sort of scientific idealist who believes in kind of the power of just raw, unadulterated goodness and your ability to lead the people to bright new futures and kind of all of that sort of stuff. He's a very tragic figure because he's sort of on the doomed planet of Krypton. Is that a doomed boat? Let us know in the comments down below, okay? But the like, that is who sort of like Jor-El is. There is a militaristic side to Krypton, but that's all Zod, right? The House of El is the house of sort of science and learning and innovation and technology. The House of Zod is warfare, fascism, right? All of the stuff that, and so this is part of what I mean when I say this movie makes me like Man of Steel more, and I was kept thinking to myself, Man of Steel did it so right, like, so yeah, I guess in its true to formness, not very, but I'm not all that mad about it in terms of the movie. Like, I think you're allowed to make adaptational changes,
sure,
and it's fair enough.
Sure. Yeah, no. I mean, obviously that is supposed to be Clark's kind of arc, right? Is like, you don't have to be the thing your father says you are. There's actually, I read kind of like an interesting take about how like this is kind of like, it's like a very kind of like pro assimilationist like immigrant view of things, like to get out, to dip your toes in the politics of it. It's like yes, Clark Kent is an immigrant, but he's one that assimilates like deeply into American culture, right? Like he assumes American culture as his own, which is kind of like an older style of thing that like doesn't, it is not the, of the people who are pro immigrant at this point in time, that is not typically the like the favored view, at least at this point in time, which is kind of interesting to me. Like it's that's like a more old school, maybe neoliberal is the right way to put it, a view on immigration, which I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I like that sort of side of things. That part is very true to the comics in my mind. I was not a huge fan of this was the other part that I thought was not great. The like Pa Kent. I actually really didn't like his conversation with Pa Kent. I think his conversation with Pa Kent was sort of terrible in a way, just because it all revolves around this stuff with Jor-El, and Pa Kent basically goes, well, it's not up to a parent to tell you who to be, it's up to a parent to tell you, to make your own sort of mistakes, which it's like kind of okay, but like typically what you see is the humanism sort of aspect of it, like the shining beacon of idealism, that's all Jor-El, and the down home country boy Scout stuff, that's Pa Kent. And placing those two things are synergistic, which is the whole point of thematically of the movie Man of Steel, obviously, right? But it places them at odds in a way that I just felt was like, this sucks. I don't like this, and I don't like this version of Pa Kent. Especially, I also did not like Pa Kent all that much either. I don't know. There was just something there that just like all of this stuff with his parents just like really hit me wrong.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of, it felt kind of fake, right? Like it felt weird that like it felt weird that like he had this like such a strong sense of morality, and it took like him, it felt like the kind of conflict, like him ignoring his parents, that didn't feel real, right? Like it felt incongruous with his character up until that point, right? Like I think what they were going for is like, oh, you see that he is actually a good person from Pa Kent reflected in his character, and he just kind of like needs to reconcile with that, but like it doesn't feel like it's something that character would do, which is like ignore his parents, idolize his like his biological parents, need to be like set straight by his head. I will say that I the actual I don't know, I could see your point on the content of the speech, but I don't know, the point where like Pa Kent basically told Clark that he was proud of him is like that pulled at my heartstring. That worked for me, right? That's like that's like every son wants his dad to tell him he's proud of him type of deal, right? Like
yeah, I guess so. I also think part of it is really that, like, I was really hoping for, like I said, this other shoe just sort of drop. It is that stuff in the moment I was kind of fine with, but when the movie sort of never corrects upon itself, that's when it all bothered me in retrospect. Because at that point, like, think about me watching the movie, right? At that point, I am assuming that the translation is off, or that Luther is faking it, or something kind of along those lines. I thought the translation was going to be off, and I thought this was gonna be a thing where it was going to be like, the robot 4 Gary whatever was going to say, well, Lex Luthor's translation of your father's message wasn't quite accurate, and they were going to do a second version that would have just done connotation level reframing, right? Instead of whatever, there's this whole thing about the fucking harem. Instead of find many wives, it's I hope you find a lot of friends and you connect with the people of this world, kind of thing. And you could imagine a version where sort of the back half of that message has a good interpretation that he just needs to hear, because it has been like kind of manipulated by Luther, which I think would have just solved everything, by the way. But they didn't do this for some reason that I find deeply wild. and I hated.
I think
all
that's
of that stuff in reverse.
I think that's just the point they were going for, right? Like I was as soon as Mr. Terrific said, like, no, that's exactly like it's not Doctor. I was like, oh, they're actually just like going for that, right? And so
yeah, I guess so. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know. Like I said, I feel like we're gonna get like I feel like part of the problem with this movie is very clearly like setting up a bunch of other stuff, right? It is not like this is not like the one and done for this version of the DCEU. Kind of in that vein, how did you feel about David Corenswet versus Henry Cavill?
I like David Corenswet just fine. I think I probably like Henry Cavill better. But I think Henry Cavill just had better material to work with, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah.
I don't know. I like Devin Corenswet. I bet if you I don't think you could have put Henry Cavill in this movie and had it been good. You know what I mean? I don't think he would have been able to do that early sort of argument with Lois very well. I think that was David Corenswet like making it sort of work. They're kind of two equally valid interpretations of the character. It's kind of like I like Ben Affleck as Batman, I like Robert Pattinson as Batman. They're two pretty different Batmans. Batman, one of them is sort of brooding, the other is very like kind of world weary, right? And I think those are both kind of valid takes on the character. And David Corenswet has this kind of like no one has challenged him. No one has really like asked him to think hard about that stuff. And he gets angry and sort of frustrated by those sorts of things, which I think is perfectly real. That's fair and valid and totally sold me. Henry Cavill has a pensive thing, right? When things go wrong for Henry Cavill, he does not get externally frustrated and yell. That's what David Corenswet does. He gets internally remorseful, right? And kind of clams up. And then he goes off on his lonesome thing to have a vision of his dad at the top of a mountain moving rocks around or whatever, right? Like those are they're just two different interpretations of the character, both of whom I think are kind of valid. Okay. David Corenswet did an okay job with this sort of stuff. I like that he's big. That was the big thing. He's so fucking tall, which is super Clark Kent. I also think that he did the Clark Kent is not Superman thing better than anybody. Nobody has ever done this split well before ever. It always just looks like you have taken a gigantic bodybuilder and put them in a pair of glasses and everyone would immediately get this. But David Corenswet, they did this stuff like this is actually stuff from the comics. In the comics, Clark Kent intentionally buys suits that are too big for himself so that they hang very loose on his frame. He's very baggy. He has sort of like this hunch to him. His hair is completely different. They did all of that stuff in the movie, which I think was great. I thought that stuff was awesome.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Very cool.
I quite liked Rachel Brosnahan. I think she was better than Amy, whatever her face is. I liked Lois Lane probably as a character better in Man of Steel because she's actually more proactive, smarter character than Rachel Brosnahan was. But I just think Rachel Brosnahan she just gets the assignment better, is how I would sort of like put it.
Makes sense. Sorry to jump back and forth, but another like, weird Lord question is Ultraman like a real character?
Yes, but no, not in this. I was actually a little mad about this. So Ultraman is the Superman from Earth 3, which is where, have you ever heard of the Crime Syndicate of America?
No.
Okay, so
is it basically like the JSA but evil?
Yeah, it is exactly that. It is the different multiverse where Superman is evil, Lex Luthor is good. And everything is turned on its face like that, right? So there are the Justice League is the Crime Syndicate of America. Instead of having Batman, you have Owlman. Instead of having Green Lantern, you have Power Ring, and they're all sort of like equal opposites in a way. So for instance, Ultraman eats kryptonite. Kryptonite fuels his powers, whereas kryptonite drains Superman of his powers. The sun deprives Ultraman of his power. It's like all kind of stuff. Ultraman is cool. Ultraman is great. He's actually the kind of central character in a storyline called Forever Evil that is truly awesome from, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago at this point, where this is the storyline where all of the heroes get trapped. They get lured into a trap by Ultraman and the Crime Syndicate, and then Black Manta and Lex Luthor and the Joker all have to team up, and like Captain Cold all have to team up to defeat Ultraman and Owlman and all of the rest of them. So this is where you get to watch it's not like, it's like Sinestro beats the shit out of Green Lantern. And like that was what made that storyline so cool. This is just Bizarro by another name. Bizarro is sort of the imperfect clone of Superman. I think they wanted to not call him Bizarro because of reasons. Also, Bizarro's powers work a little differently. Bizarro has opposite powers to Superman. He's obviously strong and durable and all of the rest of that, but he has freezing vision. He has fire breath. He obviously talks backwards, which is what everybody knows Bizarro for.
Bizarro's not exactly evil. He's just kind of like backwards, right? Like he is evil by like implication rather than like by force of. He's not like intentionally.
Yeah, he's also like typically kind of a doofus.
Yeah,
and there have been a number of Bizarros that have been like, Bizarro kind of became a sort of joke character for quite a long time, and then Bizarro got reinvented somewhere in the 2000s, I think by Jeff Johns, as like a truly evil like threat. Right?
Okay.
And this is what they were sort of like going for. Ultraman. So it is Bizarro, but they are using Ultraman because I think it just sounds better than Bizarro. I was hoping that they were going to go for an evil Superman from an alternate universe version, right?
I think it's not Bizarro because I think they're going to like. My guess is they're going to do like a real version of, probably a funny version of Bizarro in the universe somewhere else, and they didn't want to like they didn't want to spoil it because they kill Ultraman at the end of this. That are like they're going to. I could see them like pull that copy of Ultraman out of the black hole at some point, and at that point he's Bizarro because he got all fucked up or something.
Yeah, I was, Ultraman is also like smart. Like, so I was really hoping that the reveal was that as Lex Luthor was tearing into these pocket universes and all this other kind of stuff, he tapped into an alternate universe where he found the evil Superman and they're working together kind of thing. I would have gone so bananas for that. Like Act 3.
It would have been great if the person playing it was Henry Cavill too. Like that would have been hilarious. Yeah.
Oh my god, that actually would have been. Oh my god, couldn't you imagine? Holy shit, that would have destroyed me if they had done that. It's the kind of thing that if they had done that, all of the Snyder Bros would have been furious, but they all would have been wrong. That would have been fucking awesome. Okay, that would have been the greatest. Anyway. So Ultraman was essentially just a prop. I didn't like him. This is the other thing. This is where I kept the movie had a lot of moments that I couldn't help but compare to Man of Steel, and I felt like Man of Steel just was better every single time. So, it does the Superman is having a crisis of conscience and he talks to his dad, right? It does the Superman fights essentially himself, another Kryptonian, and it's bad, right? It even does sort of this like conflict or whatever in the Middle East. I mean, technically Superman's conflict is in North Africa for like Batman v Superman, but I just kind of felt like all of those were the better versions of what we would essentially got, and that included the fight with Ultraman. I think Ultraman as a proxy for Lex Luthor was fucking stupid. I was really hoping that the suit that Ultraman was wearing was going to be a thing. Lex Luthor has a power suit. It is green and purple. It is very famous. He uses it all the time. It's the thing that lets him punch Superman. It happens in the comics constantly. I was just like, why aren't we doing this? Why can't we go, I'm going to do it myself? And he suits up, and then he's telling you, he's like, I've studied all of your moves. 5A, and does whatever. That would have been great, I think. But I don't know. This Ultraman stuff, I thought was fucking cringe. I did like the engineer, though. I thought that was neat. That was probably the only part of like fighting stuff that I thought of as good or interesting, right? Was she had these fucking nanites zipping around buzzsaws or whatever. Sure, I'll get on board for that. Kind of the dark Mr. Terrific, essentially, that became.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just couldn't quite deal with Like I just thought it was like the solution to that, which was fly up in the air. Like I felt like they just like needed like a line to like make that make a little bit more sense. Like it felt like it was like just on the cusp of making sense. Just kind of like, oh, he flew up in the air, and then you can spit him out. We're good, right? Like, you know. Like,
yeah, I was also hoping for something similar. I thought it was going to be about Mr. Terrific. She's so obviously like the anti-Mr. Terrific, right?
Yeah.
She's flying around with these nanites. He has his T-spheres or whatever. And I thought it was going to be a thing where he flies to Mr. Terrific and he was going to have to like hack it or something, like hack the nanites. Mr. Terrific also actually has nanites in his blood. And Mr. Terrific has this other thing. He can't be seen by, he is a metahuman. Mr. Terrific is a wild character. He is his big thing is he's the third smartest man in the world, which they just say a lot to define who he is, but he's not the first smartest. He's always the third. And he injected himself with these special nanites that allow him to control the T-spheres and also make him invisible to electronics. So, for instance, Red Tornado. Do you know Red Tornado?
Yeah. The
Red Tornado can't perceive Mr. Terrific because he's a robot.
Yeah.
But then Red Tornado can perceive Mr. Terrific and something's happening. Tornado, is he becoming human? It's like that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, okay.
Anyway, yeah, I also thought that was kind of sort of like lame, but as a fight that was sort of interesting, I at least, you at least got me on the raw stakes of, wow, that's a really interesting. Yeah, she is going to put all of her nanites into his lungs. He is going to suffocate, even though he is super strong and all of the rest of that. How does he get out of this one? And flying up and down was pretty stupid. I would agree.
Yeah. What else?
But also, I don't know. This is the kind of stuff that I feel like I would forgive on the level of Saturday morning cartoon, right?
Yeah.
This is like kid stuff. This was a very kid movie, I guess. Which I think was intentional and I'm okay with, but also I just feel like I want to be, I don't know. It was a kids movie.
No. I mean, it felt like there was a couple too many like more adulty feeling things to be like it felt like a kids movie for adults. Maybe is the right way to put it.
Yeah, there was a weird amount of sex in this movie. Is that something that you picked up on at all?
Yeah, like there's
the line "take many wives." I thought I heard it wrong. I was like, "Take many lives." We're telling Superman to take many lives. Okay, Jor-El, where are we going? No, he said take many wives. Spread your genetic seed, and then they start talking about Superman having like a secret fucking harem, and I was like, "What are we? What in a Superman film?" And there was
Lex Luthor calls him like a groomer, essentially, which is like its own thing, right?
The sexy selfies or whatever. I was like, this is a plot point that.
Like that Jimmy Olsen just like bangs.
Jimmy Olsen is turning Lex Luthor into a cuck. I thought they were gonna use the word cuck and I was gonna freak the fuck out, which they didn't, thankfully. But I was just like, that's where we're going, right? That all of the clues are in the sexy selfies. To be fair, is a plot point that I really loved because I remember thinking to myself, what the fuck is she doing taking pictures as they're like taking selfies as they're going into like Superman's secret whatever or whatever. Like it was just like a cute way to sort of nod at a like a little continuity sort of thing that would have otherwise sort of bothered me, right?
Yeah.
But that was just crazy. The fact that they reference mutant toes, I was just like, I don't know. And also Cat Grant, there was one very specific part where I was like, this is going to activate puberty for a number of young boys, okay? Which is watching Cat Grant in slow-mo, like cheering or whatever, but she just has this super low cut, so it's just very boobs. And I was like, this is the kind of thing that like, if I was a little kid, I'm sure I would be like, oh, okay. You know what I
mean? I did like the journalism team on like Mr. Fantastic ship. Like that felt like, that felt fun at least, right? Like
yeah. There were also small moments with Lombard. I hate Lombard as a character. I don't know why they use him, but
he's a sports writer.
Yeah, he's like the sports writer. He's like very like he's like Flash Thompson in a way, he's just like the bully in the office who makes fun of Clark for being a you know, a goody two shoes, but also it's like I don't know. I was just like, why are we doing Steve Lombard and Guy Gardner in the same movie? They're the same character. And I like Guy Gardner. The haircut line was so good. Everybody makes fun of Guy Gardner's fucking haircut. It's so doofy.
Yeah, I think Nathan Fillion was a great choice for that.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the Baravia thing?
Yeah, we can talk about the politics. So, are you talking about Drew Pavlo? How do you know?
Well, so he's one side of it. Like I've seen him.
Oh, okay.
I've seen him, and I've seen a bunch of like hardcore lefty types all insist that like, you know, the president of Baravia is supposed to be Benjamin Netanyahu, which doesn't make any sense to me, right? Like,
yeah, I think all of that stuff is reaching for a variety of reasons, but
I think you have to. I've been thinking about this for a while. It's like because like the kind of like far left version of this is like I can't believe they made this like, you know, seminal anti-Zionist movie type thing, right? But I like basically you have to buy into like there's nothing that makes him that way unless you buy into the negative framing, right? Like if you had like, you know, made him obviously Jewish, say, right? And then you like, you know, made him into this like murderous dictator, right? Like then maybe the criticism hits, but I like you have to already have bought into the kind of like framing of that about like the, you know, the real world conflict in order for it to apply to this particular conflict.
It feels honestly, and I hate doing this because I feel like an asshole. I feel like I argue against this viewpoint all of the time, right? Because I do think things have meaning. I do think that there are subtexts in these movies that you can like get after, right? But just like you have to jump through so many hoops and also ignore so much obvious evidence right in front of your fucking eyes in order to buy this, right? So for instance, Barovia and Jarhanpur are next to Yugoslavia. They show the map and they show the two of them and Yugoslavia here. That clearly makes it an Eastern European country. All of the characters are coded Russian. They are speaking a Slavic language. I don't think it's Russian, but they're speaking a Slavic language. And all of the people who talk about this thing are also speaking the Slavic language. They're not speaking, like, it would be obvious if they were speaking Hebrew, because Hebrew is the only language that has that, I guess technically Yiddish, like, you know what I mean? That has that specific kind of phonetic
cadence.
Like, yeah, exactly. And so it's conspiracy. Like, this to me is the same level of conspiracy theorizing about where you just have to obsess about specific details, and you can't you just have to ignore so much obvious stuff in order to get there. Like, in a world where the flag that they made for Superman was a black flag with a red triangle and a green S, maybe you could get me on board that this is sort of pointing to, in order for there to be subtext, there has to be fucking subtext. You know what I mean? Like, it's obviously Russian. It's obviously Eastern Europe. It has nothing to do with Israel fucking Palestine.
And
touch grass.
I would say also by word of God, it is nothing to do with it, because I believe like the entire thing was written well before, like, you know, but before the most recent conflict too. So, you know, it's not like it's, you know, obviously word of God isn't end all be all, but like, you know, it's
so when was October 7th? Was it 2023?
I think so,
because the script was written in June of 2023. So if October 7th, which is what made all of these people care about Israel Palestine in the first place, I'm sorry, I really don't want to get too political here. Okay, but you know, obviously the script predates the incredibly influential flare-up in Israeli-Palestinian relations that made it a fundamental talking point for people on, you know, both on the left and also on the right, because there's the opposite end of this. Sure. I've seen that side of things where this guy on Twitter went on this screed talking about how Superman is anti-Semitic, which I actually quite like this, because I think it's sort of unhinged in a hilarious way. Superman is actually famously quite Semitic, right?
Written by two Jewish guys, right? Is like the thing that, like,
he is made by two Jewish guys, and he is kind of alternately a Jew, a Moses figure or a Jesus figure, right?
Right.
Obviously, the Zack Snyder version, that's a Jesus figure. It's why the spear of kryptonite is a fucking spear that gets stabbed through Superman's chest, right?
It's the
Because
reason why he
this
goes
is
like, does the T-pose in space.
exactly. Yeah. Exactly, right? But you could also do Superman as Moses, which I also like that. I actually think it's better technically. I like the Superman as kind of like
the pod, like you can draw very clear, parallels to the Reed basket, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. All of that kind of stuff, right? But I just think so. The idea that this Superman is anti-Semitic, I think, is laughably untrue, but also kind of funny because of the this extra sort of context. But I do think that the movie is mildly political in the sense of I was really happy with kind of how sort of like multicultural it was, and the immigrant side of things. All of that I thought was pretty kind of it was like real. I wouldn't even say necessarily like it's not that deep. It's a kid. It is fundamentally a kids movie.
yeah,
It's just, but like
I
the
would
part
100%
where
agree. Like the Drew Pavlo is the only person I saw like on the right doing the whole kind of the anti-Semitic thing. Most of the right-sided complaints are like standard kind of like it's woke type stuff. So
yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, I don't even know what like to make of sort of that sort of side of things. But the part that I really liked is like the Superman, the falafel guy that dies.
yeah.
Like it's stuff like that. I 1000% buy that. There was a falafel guy who came to help pick Superman up when he got busted through 10 feet of concrete or whatever. And he remembered that guy, and he feels really bad when Lex Luthor shoots that guy on round 2 of Russian roulette, which I thought was actually a great moment, to be honest. I will say one other piece of kind of unmitigated praise is I quite liked Nicholas Hoult. I thought Nicholas Hoult was excellent. I don't love this version of Luthor, mostly because he ends up being put in a cop car. Luthor is typically too smart for that, which I am not a huge fan of. I want Luthor, even when Luthor gets found out and his scheme gets foiled, he typically has a good exit strategy that keeps him from going to jail, right? Keeps it people in the public eye still think of him as billionaire philanthropist, technologist, entrepreneur Lex Luthor, right? I wish that the movie had sort of done that side of things. I had the same complaint about Batman versus Superman, if you remember. But hey, Nicholas Hoult did a great job. I was on board for that part. The only thing I wish is he was in that fucking power suit at the end, because it just like this is a little bit like Thanos. It's the physical fight is a proxy for sort of the thematic happening between these two people. And so when you have Lex Luthor giving orders to a Superman clone who is not a real character, it just removes sort of this kind of layer of import. Superman has to punch Lex Luthor in the face. Lex Luthor has to punch Superman in the face. It's important that the fight that they have between the two of them, if we're going to make it a physical confrontation, make it a physical confrontation. Don't play this fucking like sleight of hand bullshit with me. I just think that removes all of the stakes in the import or whatever from kind of what's going on.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
I will say my favorite part about Lex Luthor though was when Superman busts into this office and is like, "Where is my dog?" Yeah. That was great. That was so good.
I get that. Like it also kind of like I don't know. I just, like I said, I'm not a big fan of crypto in this movie, so it felt this is like a dumb reason to like cause it. I don't know. I find that like this meta plot point where like they display this message and everybody instantly turns on Superman, and then like and then I guess they find out that Luthor's bad, so that everybody forgives Superman instantly. Like it's like that just kind of like what like.
Yeah, I don't love any of that kind of stuff, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like the internet troll monkey thing I thought was dumb, but like, it's all ultimately.
Oh, the troll monkey thing, yeah. I also thought that was I felt like that was James Gunn like working out, because he was obviously viciously assaulted by the troll some years ago when he got taken off Guardians 3, and then he got put back on Guardians 3 or whatever for like edgy tweets that he had since sort of deleted, like and I have a lot of empathy for him personally, but like don't do therapy in movies. Like
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's whole thing there. A little thing that I really liked is I liked Michael Ian Black as like the the news deck person. It's like I was just delighted because I don't see him often around because he's kind of like a marginal a marginal actor at this point. But I'm a fan of some of his old.
Actually, I loved so many of these surrounding characters. I loved Otis, who is a reference. My overall point, I think, with this movie is actually that it takes too many cues, including the musical one, from the 1970 Superman Christopher Reeves movie. I have a lot of respect for that movie. I think it is sort of like an important movie for its time. It is the thing that breaks comic books from sort of an like a weird subculture into real culture, kind of for the first time in movie form. All that stuff I think is really important and great. But there is a mythology around it that I don't think is supported. Like, I don't think it's a good movie, basically, right? Otis comes from sort of like that. And a lot of what is happening like is the same sort of the problems. So this movie has the same problem that not Richard Donner, Bryan Singer's Superman Returns from 2006 had, and all of those problems were the thing that Man of Steel was trying to correct upon, right? This is kind of this is the context that I think gets lost in the Man of Steel conversation. People think of Man of Steel as sort of a pushback against Marvel. It's not really all that accurate. Man of Steel comes out the year after Avengers comes out, so those two are kind of like pitted against each other in a certain sort of way. But like the reality is that Man of Steel is more of a comment on Superman Returns, of doing the opposite of what Superman Returns did by focusing on the action, making a real threat for Superman to sort of solve, all getting rid of Lex Luthor, just like all of the rest of that kind of stuff. And I think that this movie backtracks on some of that. In a certain sense, I think that it's doing a little bit of what Man of Steel was doing at the time, which was looking at the previous Superman movie and trying to correct for some of its. I didn't even mention it, but I guess I'll mention it now. All of the stuff about saving people is fucking cringe. I hate it. I think it's stupid and dumb, right? It's like, it's just we've been having this sort of same dialogue since 2014, since the Age of Ultron kind of did it sort of for the first time, and I just think it is a poor frame for your movies, right? I can kind of get to a certain extent that Superman's just motivated to save sort of like lives and do stuff, but I think there is a misunderstanding of what that sort of means, and I am the person who feels this way, and I will constantly complain that like I just don't find it all that compelling to see a Superman who rushes around to save every like little kid from the consequences of this disaster. It's a disaster movie. People are going to die. That's okay. We can live in that world, right? And it's not Superman's fault that these people die, because he can't, he's not going to be able to be in all these places at once. All of these movies have done that ever since Steel, and I just think it's like terrible. It's always bad, basically.
Yeah, no, I get that. I appreciate it as kind of like a way to distinguish him from the other characters, right? He's like, he cares about them. He wants to save this like Godzilla looking thing to try and he doesn't want to kill it if he doesn't have to. Like, I appreciate that as a differentiating factor. I do think they went a little too far with it, especially when he's saving a squirrel. But like I think it works for me just because it's not just it's not for its own sake, right? It is to differentiate him from Guy Gardner and Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl.
Yeah, I will probably grant that. I also think that really what I'm kind of getting at is like there's this whole sequence about evacuating sort of Metropolis. I think that is essentially my argument would be that it's sort of responding to a bad faith criticism, right? I think people are smarter than that. They understand. I'm sorry, Batman vs Superman also did this, which I thought was cringe and stupid. And it's just like, it is okay for there to be casualties in a superhero fight, and those casualties should not be the fault of the superheroes. When we buy into that sort of framework too much, we just make these ridiculous, right? All I really need, like for instance, there's one shot that I think is great. There are a bunch of exploding gas tanks and Superman tucks the girl using all the trailers. This is cool, right? All you need to do is show one or two moments like that, and you have convinced me that Superman cares about the people that he is
That's
around.
Fair.
You don't have to show every single person, the monster does a crazy fire breath attack, and then Superman turns around to make sure, oh, they just got light second-degree burns. No one is dead. You know what I mean? It's like, we can fill in these blanks for you. You don't have to keep reinsuring
Yeah, that's
us,
fair.
right? It kind of is the feeling of like you know, my I'm not a sexual abuser shirt has a lot of people asking me questions about whether or not I'm a sexual abuser that's answered by my shirt. It has that feeling to it, to me, which I just hate. I think it's just super cringe, but I just feel like all of these fucking movies do it, and they have all done it from Man of Steel because everyone responded to this criticism from Man of Steel that I think is fundamental.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I get all that. All right. Do you have anything else you want to talk about this?
Not really. I will say one thing. I said I was not super excited about the future of this franchise. That is true. Part of this is I think Supergirl stuff was clunky. Reminds me of Wonder Woman looking at the laptop dossier in Batman v Superman. Just like the worst moment in that movie. Um I think that part was pretty cringe. I have faith though that maybe different directors can make these different sort of things happen. So for instance, Andy something, I want to say Andy Milonakis. That'd be hilarious if he was directing Batman. They're doing Batman and Robin, which I have been asking for forever. A Batman movie where they do sort of like Robin appropriately. And I'm so cautiously optimistic for sort of that
do
kind
we know
of
who
stuff.
the Batman is for that? Like
Nope,
who's playing
I
it?
don't even know that they've done casting or
Okay.
sort of anything from it. My understanding is that Supergirl is like done. So it is Superman, Supergirl. They're doing Wonder Woman next, and then they're doing Batman and Robin sort of like after. So, but all of this stuff is open to change, especially because that guy is the director of the Flash movie, and the Flash movie famously tanked at the box office. So,
okay, yeah, no, I don't know. Like, I almost feel like who's directing Supergirl?
I have no idea who's directing Supergirl,
because it feels like Supergirl is a character that James Gunn would do better than Superman. Like, Superman's a little too squeaky clean for like James Gunn's style. I feel like
oh my god,
what?
Craig Gillespie is doing Supergirl. This is the guy who did I, Tonya, who did wow, this is sort of wild. I'm kind of surprised they got he's been he's been a director for sort of a long time, but completely outside of this field. The big thing is he did I, Tonya. I don't know if you the Tonya Harding movie. There was like an Oscar contender. It got Margot Robbie an Oscar, I'm pretty sure. He did Cruella, hilarious, wild movie. He did the Dumb Money, which is the GameStop movie. So yeah, Craig Gillespie, I guess.
Okay, interesting. Well, I guess we'll follow that as that happens.
Yeah.
How was your week?
I did a bunch of I did a bunch of stuff, and I don't even know, but maybe I'll start with we can talk about the new commander deck that I built, which is Magda Brazen Outlaw. So you looked up Magda when when we were talking about this in the pre-show. What you said something and I was like, that's true. You were like,
seems strong.
She seems strong. Yeah, she is very strong. I liked it. This deck is typically built one way, which is you power out a bunch of treasures and then go tutor your library for stacks pieces, these artifact sort of pieces. I wanted to do it the opposite way. I wanted to, because basically, to read off the card, for those of you who don't know Magic cards by heart, Magda has 3 abilities, only 2 of which matter. One is whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token and sacrifice 5 treasures. Search your library for an artifact or dragon card and put it onto the battlefield. So that second clause is fucking insane. Being able to tutor up any artifact is in your library is super fucking good. And typically she gets used for that purpose. In order to, you can tutor up combo pieces. There's a couple of combos that I sort of stumbled across that I was like, Oh, this seems really good. There's a card that I had that I considered putting in the deck called Battered Golem, which untaps whenever an artifact comes into play, and then another card which is an equipment that gives the equipped creature every creature type. And I was like, oh, this is a infinite combo. If I do this, then I tap the golem, then a treasure comes into play, untaps the golem, I tap the golem again, treasure comes into play, untap the golem, so I can generate infinite treasures. That seems really fucking broken, so I did not put that in the deck. Instead, what I did with this deck was I was like, let's find a bunch of cool big ass dragons. And the way I built this deck for Rachel, and the way that I told Rachel, I was like, really, this deck has a couple of toolbox tricks where you can sacrifice treasures to do neat things in order to like fuck around. But really what you want to say is you go, I'm going to sacrifice my 5 treasures and I'm just going to flip the top of my deck until I hit a dragon card, and that dragon is coming into play, right? Because at the end of the day, they're all just big beefy dragons, and the deck is built to sort of win by swinging with like a gigantic fucking 5/5 in the air with double strike or something, right? I played a test game with Rachel yesterday where I had a truly giganuts start of Soul Ring into a Mana Rock on. I was playing a different deck. I was playing Frodo and Sam. And the dragon deck was insane. It like matched that by just having a 1-drop dwarf into 2-drop Magda into a vehicle that they could both tap to crew and create all these fucking treasure tokens. And I was like, oh my god, if I played this deck like in the mean way, which is to say you tutor up the specific dragon answer at any individual time, it just would blow anything out of them. I think it's probably the strongest deck in like our pod because just this commander is so insane. But I think playing it as sort of ripping dragons off the top is fun and interesting, and we'll see how it goes next week when people get together and we do a big night where we get to play.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that sounds like a bunch.
I'm trying to bridge Rachel into dirtily decks. I was
What is a dirtily deck?
A dirtily deck is like a deck that takes a lot of game actions. The kinds of decks that I like are dirtily decks. Okay, let me put it that way, right? A deck that goes, oh, so I'm gonna untap this, and then this, and this creature's gonna phase in and phase out, and I just want to be able to narrate all of my different game actions to you. That's dirtily, without really accomplishing all that much. That's like dirtily. My Stella deck is probably the dirtiest deck because it's like, I'm gonna tap this and do this and whatever, and the end result is like, I've drawn 9 cards, which is good. Yeah, it's good, but like it doesn't. You kind of expect at the end of that to like win the game or play a 10-10 or something, right?
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that sounds cool. Excited to see how it plays out. I pulled Stiltskin out of Final Fantasy pack. He's
Stiltskin.
I will read out the text for you. Legendary creature Moogle. He's 1 white. Lifelink 2 tap. Target opponent gains control of another target permanent you control. If they do, you draw a card. I have not figured out how to make this work as a commander yet, but I'm going to. Like, I saw this card in like a was like, this is stupid. I need to figure out how to make this work as a commander. And then like my work does like a sealed pool per set. First pack I open the rare with Stiltskin. I'm like, perfect. I'm set, right? I just need to figure out how to like make this actually work. There's not a lot of stuff in white to give away that's like mean, right? Like the best you can do is like, maybe charge up a 1 ring and like hand it off to somebody. But I'm gonna be working on it and figure out what I can do with it.
I think that's sweet. I really want to make the Bumblefogger deck from Distraction Makers, famous podcast that we talk about all the time on this podcast, I guess. They have Forest has a deck that they call Bumblefogger, which is Ms. Bumbleflower and a gazillion fog effects. And the whole point of the deck is to make everybody draw lots of cards, and then when they attack you, you just fog a lot. And I just think that deck sounds fun. I think that I also feel like Group Hug is a deck archetype I do not have at the moment, and I would like to add. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. What else?
What have you been doing in the video game world?
I played a lot of Apex. Played enough Apex that I started getting mad at it. I was like, I should stop. Like I did the thing where I was like playing beyond where I was having fun to like accomplish the battle pass goals, even though I didn't buy the battle pass and I don't care about any of the things in the battle pass, it's kind of like the compulsion to be like, oh, check off the checkbox, right? I was like, I need to stop doing this, and so I stopped playing.
I totally get this. I feel this way about WoW and Hearthstone, which are the two games that I'm playing sort of like right now, where because the new WoW patch is coming up, I think in what is it, 2 fucking weeks? Jesus. Yeah, 2 weeks from Tuesday is the new WoW patch, and I haven't done the delves for the season, so I've just been going through, and I want to max out the overcharged delve because it gives you a mount, and I was just like, oh, I want to get this mount before sort of the end of the season. So I've been logging on and doing tier 11 delves, and they are so laughably easy that I'm like, what am I doing this for? But I also just kind of like, I hate doing this stuff in reverse. I want to do it when it's current or whatever. And I've also been there. They added a bunch of stuff to sort of farm, like we talked about the collector's bounty last time. So I've been doing a little bit of mount farming. I've picked up a couple of like rare mounts. I mostly looked at mount farming as, let me do the most fucking annoying mounts first. What are the mounts that I find to be just the most brain like numbing mounts that I would want to farm, which ended up being mounts out of Cataclysm, because the Cataclysm raids fucking suck and have no skips or anything like that. And I picked up a couple of those, but now I'm just trying to, I'm just like hitting on a couple of these extra sort of things. And then in Hearthstone, we did a whole podcast last time about like the Hearthstone sort of like meta, and I have been playing a deck in Hearthstone that I actually think is a great deck. It's called Protoss Priest. It's a very fair mid-range deck with a lot of tricks to it, which is really sweet. There's just like a lot of neat stuff you can do that like only a smart player who outsmarts their opponent would be able to do. So for instance, I actually played a Protoss Priest mirror today where I held Protoss Priest is built around playing a big 10/10 for like 6 or 7 mana. So a 10/10 for 6 is like great value kind of thing. And I held the thing, a priest card that can swap stats. And I waited for them to drop their 10/10, and then I swapped their 10/10 onto my 3/1 so that I could attack them for lethal, because I knew, I was like, if they play Mothership this turn, I can hit them in the face for 10 with this swapping cards. And it's like that, those kinds of plays, you feel so cool, right? But also at the same time, I don't super love a lot of the decks in the meta. There's some decks in this meta that are just like, they're just like unfun to play against because they're pretty scammy. They're basically, when I say scam, they are non-interactive, as I guess what I'd say. It is, do they have their combo piece? They win. Do they not have their combo piece? You sort of. And those are just like, they're like, there's no skill expression there. It's like, maybe you can do some weird stuff to outsmart their go turn if you're clever. And I like being clever, but mostly I'd find that I either just roll over those decks because they didn't draw the most important card that the whole deck is centered around, or they blow me out on turn 5 with some ridiculous combo that it's like, well, they had the combo on turn 5. Can't fight that, right? Like,
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say I did the thing that I wanted to do with the patches. I killed the underpin on question.
I don't even have access. Do you know how I get access to him?
Can't you just like walk there? It's like
I don't see it. I think it's because there is one delve I have not done in Undermine, and I think it gets unlocked when I do that delve. I've only done like Sluis Street because I've only been doing delves when they're overcharged.
Oh, okay.
In order to get.
Like, you know what? You might be missing the one that's on the. It's like part of Undermine, but it's actually in the area adjacent to the Ringing Deeps. Like the new. There's like a old gods kind of half themed one with like drills that is in.
Yeah, I have not done that one. Yeah. I have done the city streets one, which I actually quite like that. I actually think that I'm sort of up on delves at the moment. I think delves are good content, even though I am doing them kind of a brainless way that I don't super like. And I think that delve is very sweet because it's very it has all this verticality to it that's super fun and interesting to kind of like play around.
Interesting. I'm not a big fan of the other one, just because it's like long and like it's kind of like it's like a big open area, and like if you're interested in exploring, I had a lot of fun just kind of like running around the outside of it and finding like random like Easter eggs. But it's an easy to miss because it is, you know how like when you open Undermine, there's like that entrance area in the Ring Deeps that's like it's they bust through the wall, and there's this like add-on piece of ringing deeps that they added on for the patch. It's in that area. It's like right outside the entrance to Undermine. Like if you walk out of Undermine, there's like if you take the like the Goblin card out of Undermine, there's like a thing there. But it took me a couple of attempts to do it, but I tried this a couple of months ago, and you were like, I'm gonna wait till I'm at full power. I was like, you know what, that's a good thought, and then I did that. It's an annoying fight. It's definitely got a lot more attention you got to pay to it than the previous one, but I was happy to get it done.
I am looking at season 3 because I actually don't know the answer to this. I paid a little bit of attention to some season 3 stuff, but generally speaking, I'm going into the season pretty unspoiled just because I'm not playing or thinking about WoW all that much. But the season 3 nemesis is Nexus Princess Kaiveza, the former raid boss. That's cute. I love that. But I was interested. I haven't seen a delve. I guess there's no new delves in. They don't say anything about delves in.
There's got to be something
season 3. So
yeah, we'll see. I guess.
Yeah, we'll see.
I switched up. So I looked up the armor set bonuses for Monk, just because like the Celestial Conduit of the Celestials, version requires like a specific talent and requires Slicing Wind, so I just wanted to get some reps in on using Slicing Wind to replace the Serpent Kick, which is a weird feeling ability, but I need to have that on the bar to like make the set piece bonus really work. So I wanted to get some reps in on that. I hope that Celestials is better than Shadowpan, because like I really don't want to be managing Wisdom of the Wall and stacks bonuses, because that was not super fun. With like initially that was the first season, that was the better thing, but we'll find out, I guess, when everybody runs the Sims. So
yeah, listen, when all of these people do the work for us, okay,
yeah,
on whether or not these things are good.
I would say Babylonius, who is like the historical, like the Windwalker monk that does everything and runs Peak of Serenity. He's like, yeah, I've been playing Rogue this patch because my guild already has a Windwalker monk, and so he's like, everybody else is like doing the actual like work there. So it's like, oh, I guess he's stepped back.
Yeah, that stuff I think is interesting. I have seen more kind of long time main switches, I guess I would call it, in War Within than any other time in WoW's history, which I don't I don't know how I would talk about this in just sort of like any other way. But like Sarian is an obvious example. Sarian is playing War Within on this Hunter. Another example, a friend of mine who is a rogue main has become an evoker main, just because he doesn't like the hero talents for rogues. And I just I think that stuff is it's sort of interesting, it's sort of neat. I have decided that I am going to play a specific character for the next raid, specifically because the tier set looks cool. And so we're going to be bringing Gorash, the Enhancement Shaman, to raid, just because it's a sweet raid set.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I obviously don't play alts, so I'm going to be playing Build Mod. Yeah. What else? I don't know. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I watched Good Morning Vietnam a few weeks ago on the plane.
Oh yeah, so what did you think about that?
It was weird because there's like not a lot of actual plot that happens, right? It's just kind of like
movies were worse. This is what I would say. Movies were bad back then, even the good ones. I was thinking about this in the theater because I saw the trailer for Freakier Friday. Did you see that?
No.
How did Freaky Friday become a movie sort of staple that we would understand? If I told you, oh, they did a Freaky Friday episode in Family Guy or something, you would immediately know what that is. That two people swap minds, right? I don't know how this sort of happens, but I don't know. I have this feeling the movies were bad. Everyone who reveres the classics, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Movies used to be bad. And one of the movies that is famous and people like a lot because it was Robin Williams' first big break was Good Morning Vietnam, but that movie has no plot really. It's just kind of a bunch of scenes where Robin Williams is doing shtick, and that's pretty cool. He's a good actor. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's all you
I
can
would
really
say
say about it.
if I'm going to be really generous, maybe it kind of being pointless is like a commentary on the Vietnam War, but that feels like a reach. Yeah.
I feel that I think that feels like a reach, yeah.
Yeah. Um do I have anything else that I did this week? I don't really think I started the end of history and the last man. So
oh my god. I because I read the end of history. When did I read the end of history? 4 or 5 years ago. It was maybe during the first Trump administration. That would have been like 6 years ago at this point. Holy fuck.
it's almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit on the podcast. I guess I do want to we talked a little bit about sort of stuff. I want to ask the question, do you feel like the monoculture is returning because of Superman and maybe Fantastic Four, or are we kind of falling away from it?
I mean, I think it's going to stay as I think we're only going to diverge further as time goes on, right? Like, I mean, I do think there are things they'll be able to break through and become part of a monoculture, but like, it's you don't the internet has brought along like so much fracturing. Like, there are people with millions and millions of followers on YouTube that I have never heard of, right? Like, and that's just kind of like, and that's like a piece of like, this is I think beyond kind of us getting older and like not understanding the kids. I just think that like, there aren't like, I don't know, the biggest piece of the monoculture right now is maybe what, like Mr. Beast, I guess, right? Like,
maybe, yeah, I don't know.
I can't, like, I know who he is. Every once in a while, I'll like watch one of his videos because I find them like vaguely interesting. But it's not like like we have our own like we have like aligned but skewed kind of YouTube preferences, and it's like there are whole worlds of content out there that like people don't know anything about, right? Like like
yeah, I think that's a good argument for sort of the bottom end, maybe I would call it, of the monoculture. The best argument I have that we are returning to the monoculture, which I have seen, is mostly just around the pandemic. The idea is that the monoculture fractured during the pandemic, and we are slowly building it back together. And as these things go, as time sort of passes, we will eventually get another Game of Thrones, get another Avengers Endgame. We will have these, massive sort of things, and we will enter sort of culture, which I don't know if that's true or not.
yeah,
I sort of think both of those are valid theories of the cases, I guess.
I would even question if like Game of Thrones was truly that monoculture-ish, right? Like, there are things that like peek through, right? Like, like a Ted Lasso or
Squid Games would be another sort
Squid
of
Games.
one.
What's the one with Adam Scott? Not his real name, or is that
Severance? Yeah.
Severance, yeah.
Severance would be a great example.
Yeah, but they're like things that like people have heard of at least, but I don't think that like I don't think you're ever gonna get the monoculture like we had it, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that predates the pandemic. Like, will it be better than its lowest point? Yeah, I can buy that, right? Like, but I don't know if it'll ever be like it'll ever be the way it was, the way it used to be. Where everybody listened to like the same 7 songs on the radio. This was something that was because actually riding home from your place last week after D&D, I was listening to somebody talking about like kind of like the history of Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys who passed away recently, and just like everybody knew all this. Like, first of all, the idea that like I always have in my head, Beach Boys were always kind of this like flighty kind of like poppy thing that like was not serious music. It was like, no, Brian Wilson's a serious musician. Everybody like, you know, had like, you know, he's like a serious piece of the culture. And it's like, I just don't think we get like that or the Beatles anymore, right? Even the big music stars, like the closest thing I think we get there is Taylor Swift, and like I don't think relatively she's as big as the Beatles were in their heyday, right? Like, you know.
Yeah, I'm that's maybe, I don't know, that's maybe pretty compelling. Yeah. I guess we didn't talk about D&D. Obviously, you guys, there were a couple of big lore revelations about. I've had this in my mind for 10 years, this stuff with Terej, even though Terej did not have a name until Tracy's concert, where I was sitting there doodling in my program at her concert, and you know, coming up with all of the I had this frame of mind where there were the 6 books, but there's a secret 7th book. I was thinking about it like the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? You know, that you find like a secret aspect of the Bible that never sort of like that. It's like that on steroids. But I was very excited about that. I was very excited about that moment.
Nice. Yeah, no, it was super cool. You described it as what's the word? As like Judas, like, you know, stealing Jesus's valor, but like the way you described I don't have my notepad in front of me, so I can't remember the name.
Terej or Eurus.
Terej. The way you describe like Terej is like he not particularly like doesn't seem like a chill dude is the way I'll put it.
Listen, he's been locked in this beacon for 3,000 years. Okay, and then he learns that his brother stole his valor.
Yeah, fair.
You'd be pretty unchilled. I mean, there's obviously like more to that story, but in the very beginning of this, when I had the idea for the Leonin hierarchy, I had a couple of things. One of which is I wanted to make a lawful good society that could be villainous, the bad guys. I wanted to make this thing about the hierarchy where there's the list where everybody has like a ranking or whatever, which doesn't play out that much into here, but that was a core sort of part of it. And then I had this idea for this dark secret that like, you know, the thing underlying the orthodoxy is that the founding, you know, sort of prophet, the Jesus character, was betrayed by Judas, and then Judas, you know, pretended to be, took on all of Jesus's amazing accomplishments. Because I always sort of knew, I mean, I'm sure you can sort of foresee a little bit of where this, I always sort of knew that in order to disrupt a deeply like autocratic sort of oppressive culture like this one, you need to really challenge their very core, very fundamental assumptions. And so the idea of bringing back Jesus 3,000 years later, oh, this is great. You know what's funny? The very genesis of this idea came from Hell's Rebels, funnily enough. Because Hell's Rebels, in a certain sense, the orthodoxy is based on Chaliax. And there's this stuff about like erasing and redacting history and rewriting history. All that stuff comes out of Hell's Rebels, basically, is where I had the idea for some of this stuff. So, you know, I excited to carry it forward, to see where it goes, to see what you guys do next, because you're pretty close to, you know, getting out of that prison. So.
Yeah, very cool. I'm excited.
Maybe we'll do a big podcast. Maybe we'll get everybody. We'll get ready to your house, okay? And we'll do a big group podcast for one of them.
We could talk about. I'm actually interested in, like, you know, because you know, people obviously have opinions on your systems that are not as like, obviously I love all of your systems because, you know, they're things that we've talked about for a long time, but
Sarian was really mad about the tension pool for a long time.
Like,
no, we did all of those episodes of the podcast about it.
Yeah, no, it is interesting playing with people that I haven't played with for, you know, played for a long time with, because there's different expectations around the table. Like, for instance, very clearly, our friend Sarian kind of like looked at me strange when I asked him how much HP his character has. It's like, you know, it's like, oh, like, you know, I guess in his, the way he plays, you don't talk like in my mind, like when we're talking about that, that's like a thing that our characters are talking about, like in game terms. They're just like not saying HP, right? Like if I say to Ryan, you know, how much HP do you have? That is like Lomra saying to Randarius.
Randarius,
yeah. Saying to Randarius, like, how are you feeling, right? Like that kind of thing. But different expectations for different people, different strokes for different folks. So
it was pretty funny to me that I felt like I had set up this encounter. You guys started at one sort of end of the board, and when I was designing this, I was like, I'm going to make a very clear door on the other end of the board, but it's a door that you're viewing from the top down. I thought I was very clever about it. But then I think someone, it might have been you, had a little piece of thing over the door. And then there was the thing where when you're in the shadows, you're not taking damage. When you're out of the shadows, you're taking damage. And everybody just rushed into the sunlight and kept taking the periodic damage. And I was like, guys, like, whole fight is about learning how the revenants work so that, it's funny. I wanted to explain this gameplay mechanic that the revenants have healing. They heal themselves in the light of the beacon. They lose that healing when they take shadow damage when they're out of the light of the beacon. And just I guess that was a little too ludic for sort of the narrative that was going on. Everyone was pretty happy to just sit there and like bum rush this guy and kill him in the thing.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think we eventually got there, but like,
yeah,
it was just one of those things where it's like, well, you don't realize how much damage it's like. I think we all got it eventually. Just took a couple of rounds to be like, oh, we really.
The moment where Sarian used the wings to push the thing back into the shadow. That was I think I was talking to, maybe it was him, maybe it was Rachel. I was like, that was like the most satisfying moment, because that in my mind is the kind of, when I think of narrative and gameplay as sort of interweaving, that's a good example of it. Someone is watching the cues that are kind of happening in sort of the narrative and picking up on some stuff, and then using the gameplay mechanics, like the actual real decisions that their characters kind of get to make in order to uncover that stuff for the first time. That's what I'm here for. Okay, that's what's looking good, right? So
yeah, very cool. Well, we'll be playing again tomorrow, presumably, right?
Well, yeah, we definitely playing again tomorrow unless everybody fucking calls out, I guess. Yeah. So, we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything else you want to talk about, or should we wrap this up?
You know what? I think we are in a good position to wrap this boy up.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you'd like to email us with any of the things we talked about in this podcast, you can go to derpsgames@gmail.com or podcast@derpsgames.com. You can watch these shows live at twitch.tv/derpsgames or youtube.com/derpsgames. Rate reviews wherever you find podcasts. Links will be all down in the description. That's everything I'm looking to promote. Buddy, do you have anything you're looking to promote?
Future Vibe Check demo, maybe?
Yeah, Future Vibe Check demo. Yeah. As part of the Automation Fest, go check it out. File bugs if you find bugs.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Listen, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.